So first impressions, the Warrior 7 generally feels like a lighter, faster and more flexible Meilong. I would say the Meilong itself relies more on its inherent stability, meaning the cube is just inherently more stable. It also has more squared off pieces to leave less room to flex. In comparison, the Spark V2 actually is the one that when you turn it, I can feel it like squish a bit, but then the stronger springs rebound the cube back in shape. For here, it's a bit somewhere in between. I do find that it's a little bit more flexible than the Meilong, but it's definitely also a lot more stable than the Spark. And it's also a bit faster than the Meilong, which is a plus point for this cube overall.
Excuse me, my friend, what's with the corner logo? WCA Regulation 3L1 states that the logo must be on a centerpiece. This means that to use the puzzle legally, we would have to buy 2 cubes and swap the pieces. To add to the stupidity, the stickered and stickerless non-magnetic versions actually come with center logos, and it is specifically the UV magnetic version that comes with the corner logo.
So in an attempt to get the cube cheaper and earlier, I actually bought a friend's sacrificial cube. He initially bought 2 cubes, one to use as his main and the other one is to swap out the corner. And then he also helped 2 other people legalize their cubes by swapping out corners with his sacrificial cube. And I actually do have plans to send away all 4 of the logos and redo the UV coating, and hopefully the cube will be legal after that. The corner cutting of the Warrior is quite decent. I would say it's really good. It can cut 2 pieces forward, but it doesn't really make this cube special, because I do think pretty much every other good 7x7 can do that nowadays. As for reverse corner cutting, even though this is actually rounder than the Meilong, I do find that the reverse corner cutting is slightly worse, although it's still quite good in my opinion. Somewhere else also, the corners are very round and the centers are actually less round, so there's actually some room to Florian mod the center. The Warrior is overall a very similar cube compared to the Meilong. The cube features the standard double anchor mech, no extra fanciful features such as the anti-deforming mech. Both the Warrior and the Meilong don't feature that. It's just the very straightforward double anchor, although the proportions are slightly different. I would say the Meilong anchors are a little bit bigger, which might help to contribute to the stability, whereas the Qiyi ones, the Qiyi one is just a bit longer and thinner overall. The pieces are also hollowed in similar spots. On the left we have the Warrior piece, and it's actually hollowed in a way that looks a lot like the Meilong 6x6, whereas the Meilong 7 here looks more simplified. Let me just get my Meilong 6. Yes. So the back of the inner X center actually does look a lot like the Meilong 6. For the other pieces, they are also hollowed in pretty much the same spots, but for the oblique in particular, I would say the Warrior actually makes an extra effort to make it even more hollow by punching a hole right through the piece. Likewise for the outer X center, they're hollowed in the same area, but I would say that the hollow design of the Qiyi is a little bit more complicated. When comparing the edges, the Qiyi also has additional holes on the side, whereas on the Meilong it has some indents. One extra feature in the Qiyi Warrior that is not present in the Meilong is it actually has foot magnets that are comparable to the triple track of some of the Moyi cubes. Although this cube does not come default with core magnets, but it has slots for core magnets. So either they might want to release a core magnet version in the future, or there's just room to mod your own custom core magnets anyway. For the Meilong, there's no such room, but I just designed my own piece to glue it in. It's actually a triangle base, and then I elevated the corner magnet on the pedestal to push it nearer the core. And even though Torpedos have gone missing from Qiyi cubes from their past few releases, with the Warrior, the Torpedos not only make a return, but they also feature holes at the bottom. This might be an avenue to do repelling edge magnets, but the core does not come with a ball core. The Meilong, I already designed my own ball core and glued it in, and with the Qiyi, it looks like they use the same kind of core, so I can probably reuse the same files. So overall, the Warrior looks like an attempt to copy the Meilong, but not just blindly copy. It does try to add a few updates and a few improvements. Namely, it's just more rounded overall for the pieces, and also they added the triple track. And it also comes UV coated, which is nice. The Warrior has also tried to undercut the size of the Meilong by 0.5 millimeter, so this is 63, this is 62.5. Inner layers are actually of the exact same size, so they basically just shrank the outer layers a little bit. Personally, I'm not the greatest fan of this. I think 63 is a very nice size for 7x7s, and I'm not a fan of 7x7s becoming too small. It's not that far off, and I think it's still pretty nice. I would say reducing the size to like 61 or what is a bit too extreme, and I'm personally not looking forward to that. Although I have said similar things when the Alpha WRM first came out, and that one, at the time 7x7 was 67mm, and then I felt that 64.5 was too small, but now I gravitated towards a 63mm 7x7, so who knows. So other than sending away all 4 of the logos and re-UV coating over them, some other mods I did to the Warrior 7x7 include a ball core as well as a slight Florian mod on the centerpieces, and also lubricated this with Kelvin's high viscosity on the core, as well as like cubicle speedy and dignitas on the pieces. More or less my standard setup to most cubes. The feeling actually quite reminds me of my Meilong 6. This is not any normal Meilong 6, but the UV ball core 9.0 edition. So, like, the main similarity is both of them come with a soft feeling to the pieces, whereas the Meilong 7 is a bit. This is not the texture or the plastic material, but it's like how the pieces interact. Like the Meilong 7 generally gives a more solid and rigid feeling, whereas the Warrior 7 and the Meilong 6 feel a little bit softer and more fluid, like they flow between layers. But the Meilong 6, I think it goes too far in that other direction, where the stock cube itself is unstable and it becomes usable only after I modded in the ball core. Whereas the Warrior, the stock cube itself is pretty stable on its own already, and the ball core made it slightly better if I can feel any results at all, because I think the ball core is not very strong, at least the one I modded it in. However, there's room to make this stronger if I feel the need to in the future. Right now I think the cube is good for what it is. However, the way this core is designed is like, you can technically see the magnets on the core here, but you cannot see the magnet on the corner. That's because like the way they designed the slot for the corner magnet, it's still physically lower than the edge of the corner base. So if you were to compare with either of my Meilongs, I'll just show the 7 since this is about 7x7. You can visually see the magnet stick out. And that's because I designed it to push the magnet a bit deeper down the core, and doing so will interfere with the torpedoes, so I cut the torpedoes. Like, not completely away, but slightly shorter than original. There is room to make the Warrior core a bit stronger. Right now I do think that the torpedoes can also be cut slightly shorter, and then I can stack a second magnet on top if I do want this to be stronger in the future, but right now I think it's good for what it is. And it also has room to mod repelling edge magnets. So generally I would say that the Warrior 7 performs like a slightly more polished Meilong 7. Very similar features with almost the same mechanism, hollowed in almost the same places, but it throws in a handful of upgrades. Like the pieces are just slightly rounder overall, the cube comes UV coated, and the triple track magnets as well as, and the cube comes slightly smaller, which this one I don't really think is a plus point. I do find that the slightly smaller size is a bit annoying, although I might get used to it, so I'm not too sure which size I will ultimately end up preferring. Right now I do think if I were to go to a competition, I still think the Meilong 7 is a little bit more reliable for its stability. Also the bigger size, easier to grab, helps. So it's not that clear whether this is really going to take over as my main, but I do find that like as a stock cube, it's an upgrade. It's quite a strange scenario where both Moyi and Qiyi made budget 7x7s better than their flagship 7x7s. However, like, the Alpha WRM is still a very viable competition grade cube, like boasting the best stability of the top 7x7s you can choose right now. And I feel that the Meilong 7 is only slightly better than the Alpha WRM in my opinion, and like there's some debatability there which cube is actually better. And Moyi is also updating their flagship to the Alpha V5. This statement might not hold true for Moyi for that long, but the Warrior on the other hand, like, it just feels very blatantly and obviously better than the Spark V2, and is even technologically more advanced than the Spark V2 with its foot magnets, slot for corner to core magnets, and repelling edge magnets, and it even has torpedoes which the Spark doesn't have. 7x7 being a relatively longer event, it relies a lot on the cube being light and effortless to turn, so that you can practice more and maintain your stamina throughout the solve. And It just so happened that if you want to cut costs in manufacturing the cube, like weight reduction and making the pieces very hollow is another option, which coincides with what a good 7x7 is supposed to have anyway, so that might be a possible reason why budget 7x7s have a potential to be really good.